Welcome to the RTO Superhero podcast with me, Angela Connell-Richards, where we'll explore the complexities of compliance and how to ensure business success within your RTO. This podcast is for anyone within the training industry who wants to learn from my experience as an RTO consultant, RTO manager, trainer and assessor, and entrepreneur, as well as the experience of other experts in this field. Listen in and let us help you become the RTO superhero you want to be. In this episode, titled Navigating the Labyrinth, Dealing with the Complexity of Vet Qualifications, we're going to dive deep into the challenges faced by RTOs when it comes to implementing effective assessment and validation practices. In part one, we'll explore the essential steps to implement the principles of assessment and rules of evidence. We'll discuss the importance of fairness, flexibility, validity, and reliability in assessment, and provide practical tips on how to ensure your assessment practices align with these principles. Then in part two, we'll tackle the critical task of implementing assessment validation. We'll guide you through the process of ongoing systematic validation, including when and how to conduct validations, who should be involved, and how to document and act upon the outcomes. Finally, in part three, we'll dive into the standards and demonstrate how to demonstrate compliance within your RTO. We'll discuss the type of evidence you should retain, how to align your practices with the assessment system and validation plan, and provide tips on maintaining compliance practice throughout your RTO operation. So, whether you're a trainer, assessor, manager, or even a learner seeking to understand the complexities of vet qualifications, this episode is packed with valuable information to guide you on your journey. Get ready to become a superhero in assessment validation practices. Part 1. Implementing the principles of assessment and rules of evidence. Step 1. Ensuring fairness. Implementing fairness in your assessment practices is crucial to provide opportunities for all students. Let's break down the steps you can take to ensure fairness. Offer recognition of prior learning. Make recognition of prior learning available to all students at the time of enrolment or before their training begins. This allows students to receive credit for skills and knowledge they have already acquired. Accommodate individual learner needs. Consider the unique needs of each student during the assessment process and make reasonable adjustments to accommodate them. This may include providing oral assessments or other appropriate adaptations. However, remember not to compromise the rigour of the assessment process. Inform students and provide clear expectations. Ensure that students are fully informed about the assessment process and performance expectations before they undertake any assessment. This transparency helps them to understand what is expected of them and promotes fairness in the assessment process. Address skills gaps. If a student is unable to complete a required task to the level described in the assessment requirements, consider providing additional training before reassessing them. Sound enrolment processes can help identify the needs of students and prevent enrolment in courses that they may struggle to complete. Establish an appeals process. Have an appeals process in place to provide students with a fair avenue to challenge an assessment decision and have it reviewed objectively. Step 2. Embrace flexibility. Flexibility in assessment practices allows for individual variations and recognises diverse ways of demonstrating competence. Here are the steps to incorporate flexibility into your assessments. Recognise prior demonstrated competence. Acknowledge that students may have already demonstrated aspects of the unit through other means. If students can provide evidence of current skills and knowledge, they should not be required to be reassessed in those areas, unless the previous demonstration it occurred in significantly different context or environment. Use a range of assessment methods. Utilise various assessment methods to produce valid decisions about students' competence. Recognise the students demonstrate their skills and knowledge in different ways. Using diverse assessment methods helps to capture their competence accurately. Step 3. Ensuring validity and reliability. Validity and reliability are essential principles to maintain the quality and integrity of assessments. Let's go through the steps to ensure validity and reliability in your assessment processes. Assess skills and knowledge in relevant environments. Require students to demonstrate skills and knowledge across a range of environments and contexts relevant to the unit or module. Assessing in various contexts ensures that students can apply their skills and knowledge effectively in real-world scenarios. Align assessment tasks with requirements. Ensure that assessment tasks and methods align with the specific assessment requirements. For example, when assessing a practical skill like keyboarding, focus on tasks that directly demonstrate the required skills rather than unrelated knowledge about keyboards. Observe performance in appropriate environments. Assess students' ability to carry out relevant tasks by observing them actually performing the tasks in appropriate environments. Avoid relying solely on descriptions or hypothetical scenarios when evaluating their practical skills. Maintain consistency in assessment decisions. Make assessment decisions consistently across different students and assessors within the same unit or module. Provide assessors with clear guidelines and an assessment system that details the context and conditions of assessment to ensure consistency. Establish evidence criteria and benchmarks. Develop evidence criteria and decision-making rules to guide assessors in judging the quality of performance. This ensures consistent judgments about competence, including benchmarks for practical activities that encompass observable behaviours required for successful task completion. Now that we've covered implementing the principles of assessment and rules of evidence, let's move on to part 2. Part 2, implementing assessment validation. Step 1, understanding the purpose of validation. Validation is an essential process that ensures that the quality and integrity of your assessment practices. Let's break down the steps to implement assessment validity and validation effectively. Define validation. Validation is a review of the assessment judgments made by your RTO. It aims to confirm that your assessment system produces valid assessment judgments and ensures graduates that have the required skills and knowledge as outlined in the training package or accredited course. Engage with industry. Consider involving industry representatives during the validation process. This engagement helps validate that your assessment system aligns with industry expectations and requirements. Step 2, understanding the standards for assessment validation. Familiarise yourself with the standards for assessment validation to ensure compliance and quality in your validation process. Review the standards definition of validation. The standards define validation as a quality review of the assessment process, ensuring that assessment tools produce valid, reliable, sufficient, current, and authentic evidence. It involves reviewing a statistically valid sample of assessments and making recommendations for improvement. Differentiate validation from other processes. Note that validation, as required by the standards, is distinct from other quality improvement activities like moderation. While your RTO can undertake additional activities to enhance assessment quality, focus on understanding and implementing the validation requirements specified in their standards. Step 3, developing a validation plan. Now let's delve into the steps for developing a validation plan that aligns with the standards and meets regulatory requirements. Determine validation frequency. Plan to validate each training product on your RTO scope of registration at least once every 5 years. Ensure that your plan allows for validating at least 50% of the training products within the first 3 years and 3 years of each 5-year cycle. Consider specific risks and industry requirements. Industry and any specific risks related to certain training products and incorporate them into the validation plan. Industry consultation can help pinpoint areas of particular risk that require more validation. Address TAE training package validation requirements. If you are validating TAE training products, ensure that compliance with Clause 1.25, which mandates independent validation by qualified validators. Submit evidence of independent external validation when applying to add TAE training products to your RTO scope of registration. Step 4. Implementing a sampling approach to validation. A valid sampling approach enables a quality review process while reducing the need to validate every assessment judgment. Let's explore the steps for effective sampling in validation. Ensure random and representative sampling. Select a random sample of assessment judgments that is representative of all judgments made within your RTO. This allows you to reliably predict the validity of assessment judgments as a whole. ASQA's validation sample size calculator can assist in determining the required sample size. Step 5. Selecting validators. Choosing appropriate validators is crucial to maintain the integrity and professionalism of the validation process. Let's discuss the steps for selecting validators. Ensure independence from delivery and assessment. Validators should be independent of the delivery and assessment of the training product being validated. This ensures a professional distance and integrity in the validation process. Consider required qualifications and skills. Choose validators who possess appropriate vocational competencies, current industry skills and knowledge, and relevant training and assessment qualifications or assessors' skill sets. They should also have current knowledge and skills in vocational teaching and learning. Team approach to validation. Consider a team approach to validation where members collectively hold the required qualifications, skills, and knowledge. Trainers and assessors can participate in validation activities as long as they are not directly involved in the specific instance of delivery and assessment being validated. Note, different guidelines apply for TAE training package validations. Okay, let's move on to Part 3. Part 3, implementing the standards and demonstrating compliance. Step 1, retaining evidence of compliance practice. It is crucial to retain evidence that demonstrates your RTO's compliance with the standards. Let's break down the steps to effectively demonstrate and provide evidence of compliant practice. Understand context-specific evidence requirements. The types of evidence you need to retain depends on the context in which it will be used. When adding a new qualification to your scope of registration or making changes, provide comprehensive documentation on the assessment system, including assessment materials aligned with the relevant units of competencies or modules. Retain competent assessment items and supporting evidence. Keep completed assessment items along with the evidence considered during assessment. Assess the details and outcomes for students who have completed the unit being examined. Retain these records for 6 months from the date the decision on competence was made. In cases where retaining the actual item is not feasible, use alternative evidence such as photographs to justify the assessment outcome. Step 2, aligning practices with the assessment system and validation plan. To demonstrate compliance, it is essential to show that your RTO's practices align with your assessment system and validation plan. Let's explore the steps to achieve this alignment. Confirm alignment of RTO practices. Ensure that your RTO's practices and assessment methods, including validation activities, align with your assessment system and validation plan. This alignment should be reflected in information sources such as student assessments retained in appropriate files, aligned with the corresponding assessment tools. Act on validation outcomes. Implement your validation plan and document the outcomes. Show how the lessons learned from validation have been used to improve assessment tools, processes, and practices. Involve staff in understanding and implementing these outcomes. Step 3. Tips for effective and compliant assessment. Implementing effective assessment practices is crucial for compliance. Let's discuss some tips to ensure your assessments meet the requirements of the standards. Use comprehensive checklists. Develop and use checklists to ensure that all training package requirements are addressed and assessments are conducted in line with the principles of assessment and rules of evidence. Provide clear guidance on assessment tasks. Clearly communicate the assessment task to both the assessor and the student. Ensure that everyone knows what will be assessed, the context and conditions of assessment, timing and assessment environment. Assess practical skills and application. Develop processes for assessing the practical application of knowledge and skills. Conduct observations of students to allow them to demonstrate their practical skills in different situations over time. Provide feedback to facilitate development and improvement. Consider foundation skills. Check that your assessment criteria addresses the foundation skills such as oral communication and interaction with others. Ensure these skills are assessed appropriately within your assessment tools. Step 4. Effective validation processes. Validation is a critical part of maintaining assessment quality. Let's explore some considerations for effective validation practices. Ensure valid sampling. Conduct validation activities using a valid sampling approach that reflects the risks to quality. Randomly select a representative sample of assessments to review rather than validating every assessment judgment. Retain sufficient evidence for validation. Retain enough assessment evidence to validate assessment judgments. This includes assessment tools used, evidence of implementation of recommended changes, and any supporting documentation related to validation outcomes. Step 5. Work placements and workplace assessment. If your RTO engages in work placements or workplace assessments, there are specific considerations to ensure compliance. Let's explore these steps. Provide adequate information to employers and supervisors. Supply employers and supervisors with comprehensive information about the training and assessment requirements, including performance criteria, tasks, and observable behaviours. Use record books or similar documents to guide employers in completing their role effectively. Evaluate work site suitably. Establish processes to evaluate the suitability of work sites and inform employers about the specific requirements for each unit of competency. Communicate the skills that students have already attained and the skills employers need to support students in acquiring and practicing during the work placement. Define clear arrangements and responsibilities. Develop a clear document that outlines the arrangement between your RTO and the employer, including the responsibilities of each party in the training and assessment process. Clarify roles and expectations to ensure effective collaboration. Now, we all know how important VET qualifications are in preparing individuals for success in their chosen industries. But with so many qualifications and units of competencies out there, it can be a real challenge for RTOs. That's why I want to share a case study with you. We'll be taking a look at a financial RTO, a fictional RTO called Harmony Training Institute, HTI, and how they successfully tackled this labyrinth by putting in place solid assessment and validation practices. By following HTI's journey, we can uncover valuable insights and strategies that can help you navigate the complexities of vet qualifications within your own RTO. So let's jump right in and explore the case study of implementing effective assessment and validation processes with HTI as our guide. Together, we'll uncover the key principles, strategies, and considerations that can empower your RTO to deliver top-notch vocational education and training. Here's our case study, implementing effective assessment and validation practices. Harmony Training Institute is a registered training organisation dedicated to providing high-quality vocational education and training in the hospitality industry. HTI strives to ensure its assessment and validation practices align with the principles of fairness, flexibility, validity, and reliability, as outlined in the standards for RTOs. Conducting effective assessment. Fairness. At HTI, prior to enrolment or commencement of training, recognition of prior learning is made available to all students. HTI ensures reasonable adjustments are made to accommodate the individual learner needs, such as providing oral assessments when necessary. HTI also maintains transparency by informing learners about the assessment process and providing them with opportunities to challenge assessment results through an established appeals process. Flexibility. HTI recognises the value of recognising prior learning and tailors its training and assessment practices to accommodate students who have already demonstrated relevant competencies. By taking into account students' prior skills and knowledge, HTI avoids unnecessary duplication of assessment. HTI also employs a range of assessment methods to allow students to demonstrate their competence effectively. Step 3, validity. HTI ensures that its assessment tasks and methods align directly with the competency being assessed. For instance, in assessing practical skills like food preparation, HTI focuses on observation-based assessments rather than relying solely on theory knowledge. By maintaining this alignment, HTI ensures that assessment decisions are based on valid evidence of the learner's skills and knowledge. Step 4, reliability. To promote consistency in assessment decisions, HTI provides assessors with clear assessment guidelines and criteria. These guidelines ensure that assessment decisions are consistently interpreted across different assessors. HTI's assessment system includes well-designed instruments and procedures that minimise variations between assessors, enabling reliable assessment outcomes. Part 2, validation plan. Assessment validation. Step 1, developing a validation plan. HTI develops a comprehensive validation plan that outlines when and how validation activities will occur. The plan identifies which training products will be focus of validation and specifies the individuals responsible for leading and participating in the validation activities. HTI also ensures that the outcomes of validation activities are appropriately documented and acted upon. Step 2, regular validation cycles. As part of its validation plan, HTI ensures that each training product undergoes validation at least once every 5 years, with at least 50% of products validated within the first 3 years of each cycle. This systematic approach to validation allows HTI to review and improve its assessment practices and judgments regularly. Step 3, independent validators. HTI follows the standards by engaging independent validators who are not directly involved in the delivery and assessment of the specific training product being validated. These validators possess relevant vocational competencies, current industry skills and knowledge, and the necessary training and assessment credentials. HTI may also involve industry experts to ensure a combination of expertise in validating assessments. Step 4, sampling and actionable outcomes. HTI adopts a valid sampling approach during validation, selecting a representative sample of assessments to review rather than validating each assessment judgment. This approach enables HTI to infer the overall quality of assessment judgments. HTI retains sufficient evidence and documentation to validate assessment judgments and acts upon the outcomes of validation activities by implementing improvements to assessment tools, processes, and practices. Through its commitment to effective assessment and validation practices, Harmony Training Institute ensures that its learners receive fair, flexible, valid, and reliable assessment outcomes. By aligning its practices with the principles of assessment and rules of evidence, HTI maintains the integrity and quality of its vocational and education training programs. HTI's systematic validation processes further contribute to ongoing improvement, ensuring that assessment practices remain current and in line with industry expectations. And that wraps up another episode of the RTO Superhero podcast. We've explored the intricate world of assessment and validation practices and how to navigate the labyrinth of vet qualifications. We discussed the essential steps to implement the principles of assessment and rules of evidence, the importance of ongoing assessment validation, and how to demonstrate compliance with the standards. Remember, as education professionals, we have the power to shape the future of our learners and equip them with the skills they need to succeed. By implementing effective assessment and validation practices, we ensure that our RTOs are providing high-quality training experiences that truly prepare our students for the challenges of the workforce. If you found this episode helpful and want to continue your journey as an RTO superhero, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for future episodes. We'll be covering a range of topics related to vocational education and training, bringing you expert insights and practical strategies to enhance your RTO's performance. Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned, stay motivated, and keep making a positive impact in the world of vet. Until next time, this is Angela signing off. Thank you for joining us at the RTO Superhero podcast with me, Angela Connell-Richards. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Each rating and review helps me fulfill my goal of helping training organisations around Australia to learn and grow in compliance and business success.